All right. Thanks, Jen. So, like she said, my name is Amanda Jeffers, and today we're going to go over if it's time for a website redesign. And yeah, there we go. So a little bit about me. I'm a graphic and web designer, and I've been doing this for 12 or 13 years now. And yeah, I am really passionate about web design. That's kind of my thing. And I focus on WordPress development, but I've worked in a wide variety of platforms, some really obscure ones, and then the standard ones like Wix, Weebly, Square, Squarespace, Shopify, all those things. So today's presentation, we're going to talk about if your website is due for a facelift and what to look for as far as the reasons behind why maybe you need a redesign, and then like Jen said, steps to make that happen, what you should consider before diving into that. So a little bit of a difference here. There's a refresh and then there's a redesign. And so I'm going to go over both of these, but a refresh is a little bit more on a smaller scale. If you have a website and you're happy with your platform, you're happy with the functionality, but maybe it just feels a little dated or you haven't done anything with it for a while. Maybe you want to just make some updates to photos, colors, things like that. That's more of a refresh, whereas a redesign is a little bit more intensive where you're lacking some functionality and you want to make that a priority to try and grow whatever objective you're trying to do for your website. And so we're going to go over kind of both of these just to make sure you might fall into one category or the other. So just three signs if you need a refresh and some potential things to look out for here. Like I said before, maybe you just have outdated visual elements or graphics. So if you have photos that you've used before and they've been the same photos for a couple of years, you haven't touched it, or if maybe the structure or flow of the design doesn't feel as modern, then you might be looking at just doing a refresh. And this might be as simple as just changing the photos. It might be as simple as changing what color is the highlight color. But it does keep your website looking a little bit more fresh, and it does show your users that you're still working on the website, which does help your credibility, so that they know that you're active on your site and it's not just sitting there and not moving. So if you're just looking to kind of give it a facelift, that's more on the refresh side. And then if you have a lot of repetitive design throughout, and what I mean by that is if you built your site, say on Wix, and you have every single internal page looks the exact same with the, header, titles, photo, text, and it's just very monotonous, then you might want to think about, well, what can I do to kind of spruce it up? What can I do to make it more engaging? That way, again, people aren't bored when they come to your website, and there's a little bit more of an interactive feeling to it. A quick fact, 38% of people will leave a website if it doesn't look appealing. So if it does look older, that's going to be something that you might want to consider changing, just so that people know that you're trying to stay with the current trends. So yeah, if you have that really repetitive website, that might be something to look at changing, just refreshing. And then minor issues. So if you built a website and you haven't touched it in a long time and there's links on there, maybe you're linking to third-party websites that worked at some point, but maybe now it's throwing a 404 error. They have broken links. All of that can hurt your website credibility and can hurt your SEO as well. So if you do have some minor link issues, it's good to just go through and make sure everything is still current. And then confusing navigation means if your navigation has just gotten out of hand, too much going on in the navigation, what you can do to maybe simplify that to try and make it a little clearer for the user to be able to locate what they need to locate. So those are three things just more on a refresh level, but now we're going to go over more reasons of why you maybe want a redesign. And again, this is more of a significant transformation of your website. So it might be still a full redesign if you're fully changing the look on every page. But again, if you need to incorporate new functionality or change the functionality, this is when you might want to start considering doing a redesign. All right, so reason number one is if your site is 5 years old or older and you've never touched it. So, I mean, if you've had a site for 5 years, but you've continued to update it, that's different. But if you built a site and you haven't really done anything with it, there's no hard and fast rule. It has to be 5 years, but that's probably a good sign that things have changed, especially with Google's algorithms and SEO, also just standard web design practices. So it might be time to do a redesign just based on that time frame. So like I was saying, Google always changes what they're looking for and what they want. So it is good to kind of stay up to date on that so that your website is most optimized to be able to climb those rankings. Hopefully everybody's site is mobile friendly at this point. I think smartphones have been out for a while, over a decade, but still something that people maybe lose sight of is if it's optimized for the phone and if they take priority to make sure that their site looks correct on a phone. Again, Google prioritizes mobile friendly sites. So it is actually really important to make sure your site looks good on a phone versus even on desktop. It's just one of those things where it's become the more used interface for websites. And you might have a platform that automatically optimizes. I know Wix does that. I know some of those pre-made websites do that. But it is really important to still go to your site on your phone and really do a sweep of it to make sure things are looking correctly, as far as like things aren't overlapping, margins are there, text isn't going off the screen, and that kind of thing. And then also, does it feel intuitive? Does it feel like a good flow for users to actually be able to access what you want them to access? And again, according to various studies, around 60% of people will leave a site if it's not mobile friendly. I think most people have that at this point, but if you just go to your site, take a look at it, and make sure that things are looking just really clean as far as mobile. And then another thing to think about is if your site is loading slow, and it's not just loading slow, but looking at your core web vitals in general. And what this means, this might not necessarily be anything to do with the design, but more the backend platform. So if you have old hosting or a hosting company that was cheap, or you have free hosting, that might, have an impact on how fast your website loads. If you've added a lot of content over the years, lots of big photos instead of web optimized photos, that can have an impact on, that web space that you're allotted, which can slow things down. And it really is a key factor for your rankings with Google. So just seeing how your site loads functionally is an important piece. And I'm going to go over some tools that you guys can use to analyze these things to see if your site is doing well, if it needs to get better. But yeah, basically looking at how well your site performs is an important piece to look at when you're considering doing a redesign. This is kind of a newer big one that needs to be talked about is accessibility for your site, and if it's ADA compliant. Most of us just built sites and we didn't really think about it. We just made it look how we wanted it to look. And now we're seeing more and more lawsuits of people coming in saying, well, it's not, accessible for certain people with certain disabilities. And so it's important to kind of start incorporating that into your website design as soon as you can. And when it comes to, the accessibility, things to look out for are it's alt tags on your images. And that just means basically describing your images via text. So people who can't see, it'll read that description so that they can see it in their mind's eye. Clear structure of headings. So using those H1, H2 tags, that really helps keep everything clear. Color contrast is a big one. So this picture over on the left, I designed a site for a woman who really loved solid black and wanted white text on black. And it was very striking and it's very beautiful, but it was, could be very hard for people who have readability issues. So we were able to add a plugin. This is a WordPress site. We could add a plugin for accessibility where someone can click on that icon and, they can change the text size, they can change the contrast, they can change the background to a white background. So that way, even though her website looks really, really clean to maybe most of us, this way people are able to access and read her site without losing that, accessibility factor. Um, yeah, so resizable text, if text can be, and most of the time, even with a browser, people can, scale up their text, but still a thing to consider. Accessible forms. So a lot of people are using forms without labels or without help text or things like that. That's a good thing. You want to make sure you have a clear label, clear help text, clear error messages. If there's error messages, that way people understand what they need to do if they have a disability. And then a consistent navigation. Most people have a consistent navigation, but still it's something to keep in mind, because people might, with disabilities or cognitive disabilities, might have a hard time keeping tabs of things. So consistency helps them know where the navigation is every time. And then lastly, captions and transcripts. If you have videos on your website, does it have captions? And if you have audio on your website, do you have a transcript of that? So again, these are, again, this isn't new, but it's getting more relevant with all the lawsuits happening. So going through, and again, I'm going to share a tool that you can use to see if your website is accessible or not, or what needs to happen. And they give you a pretty good report on what you can do to change things up. Another reason that you would want to do a redesign is if you're looking to rebrand overall. So some of us create a logo maybe on our own, maybe we're just a startup and we have a logo. And maybe it's time to take it to the next level, make it more modern. Maybe your target audience has shifted overall. And if that has happened, your messaging has probably changed, and it might be a good opportunity to change your logo and change your branding, change your colors. So if you're going to do that, obviously that needs to translate to your website. And so you'll want to completely overhaul your website to factor in this new brand and this new story that you're going to add to your website. So if you already have a logo or a brand that you are, say, stuck with, I mean, if you're with a company that already has a logo, I know that you can't change these things, but it might be something to look into if you can make it more unique for yourself. But yeah, rebranding is another good reason to do a full website redesign. And then another one is that your SEO status is not meeting your expectations. So if you're searching your site, putting in the keywords you think should pop your site up, and people are it's not popping up at all, people can't find you online, maybe that's what you want to prioritize for 2025 is your rankings. This is a good reason to start right at the website, on the website level, to figure out what you can do to optimize your website for SEO, figuring out what the most current practices are, what is, getting ranked, what is important to the algorithms for ranking. So it's really good to do an SEO audit of your website first. And then from there, you can start building out utilizing their tools such as Google Search Console, Google Analytics, if you have a Google business listing, which hopefully everybody does. But those are all really good tools to help monitor and grow your ranking status when it comes to Google. But it all first starts with the website, because if you're missing those keywords on your website, or you're missing the correct structure for your SEO on your website, then that could have a huge impact with you not showing up, or your website not showing up when people are searching. And then another one is if your information is hard to find. So one thing I've found is people might build a website and it starts with just maybe 1-2 pages, and then it starts growing because you have more and more to add, more content, you're passionate, you start putting up a lot of content, and all of a sudden you have 50 pages and they have a lot of text on it. And again, it's that monotonous look. And then it just has almost too much. And then the important thing is when someone comes to your website, you really want to help guide their eyes where you want them to go or what information you want them to process. So, and we're living in a time now where people really want answers immediately. They don't want to have to read, they don't want to have to find it or hunt for it. So, using that practice of, giving them the quick information, a really short highlight, and then hopefully being able to add that call to action to draw them in, and in order to get further into the site, in order to get them more information that you want them to have. So if your site kind of looks like this one, where it's just maybe a little overwhelming with lots of information, lots of links, lots of stuff in the navigation, it might be time to think about reorganizing and trying to find a new way to structure your site that is easier for people to navigate and easier for people to absorb the information you would like them to absorb. Okay, so those were 7 reasons, and you might fall into one of them, you might fall into all 7 of them. And so it might be like, okay, yeah, I think it's about that time. But now we're going to go over what to think about and how to start that process. Um, if you already have a web designer, this might be something super easy. You just get in touch with them and you start working with them. But if you are your web designer, then you can put yourself kind of in the shoes of that space. And then if you don't have a web designer, this also goes over kind of how to vet that out and see how that would, how you can find one that maybe fits your needs. Um, so step 1 is doing a website audit. And this can be as in-depth as you want it to be, because if it's kind of outside your expertise, you can start as simple as just going through your website page by page saying, you know, does this content make sense? What am I trying to accomplish with this page? What do I want a user to do? Things like that. Are the photos outdated? Do you want the photos updated? Um, and then another good thing is user feedback. So if you've had your website for a long time, if you have a nice customer base or a pool of people you can ask for feedback, that's a really good thing to do. And hopefully, if you've had a website for a long time, you do have some kind of SEO data that you can look at, like what pages are, you know, being landed on for the longest time, what pages aren't getting hit at all, things like that, just to kind of get an idea of what is happening on your site. But again, if that's a little bit outside your expertise, you can work with a web designer to go over that audit and look at what's working and what's not working. But step 1 really is to figure out, you know, what your website looks like right now and how is it functioning um, from your perspective. And then from there, that's where you need to really drill into your goals and objectives. So what do you want to do? What do you want to change? You know, do you need more sales? Do you want more contact form messages, more leads? All of those things need to be determined before you change the design, because you want to make sure that the design is obviously optimizing what goal and objective you're trying to get. So I think one thing to do even before you go to your web designer is to first say, okay, I know I need a redesign, but what do I want? And kind of write out those goals in order to figure out, you know, how we can redesign it to make sure those goals are met. We'll probably be on this slide for a little bit. I know there were questions about budget. So it is a good idea to understand what your budget is maybe before you talk to a web designer, just to understand. And, you know, obviously when it comes to budget, it just depends. Things like your site's size and what platform you're using, and then the designer's fees are all going to put this in a big range. Obviously, a small site might not take very much. And you know, a site can be as big as honestly a page, like a single page anchor site. If you don't have a website at all and you don't have much of a budget, you know, that's always a good starting point, just to have something up there, something that's getting crawled, something that's getting your name on the web. That's important. So you can do that with honestly just a single anchor landing site. And then with hopes that you'll grow that out as time goes on, and as you get your feet under you and your business starts growing, you would start growing that website out. So something like that might be much more affordable. Whereas complex sites might be obviously a lot more budget intensive when it comes to if you have an e-commerce site and you have 200 products, especially if you're planning on migrating to a different platform altogether. That could be a big shift. A lot of times, for instance, a Wix site, it's like renting, so you don't actually own all that content and you can't just grab the files and move them. You have to basically rebuild that site from scratch. You can have it look the same, but it has to be fully rebuilt on another platform if you're using, say, WordPress, moving to WordPress. So that could be another complexity that causes the budget to go up. Obviously, if you're moving from a Shopify site to a Square site, that's another big shift. And it depends on how many products you have. So all those things make a big impact on the budget. But that's where I think when you do the audit, when you do your goals and objectives, you can kind of understand if you need to be moving it to a whole nother platform, or if you just can stay where you're at and shift things around to make it to do the redesign right there. But again, most designers should give you a project scope and an estimate so you can kind of get a quote to figure out what it's going to take to make this redesign happen, or even just a refresh if that's where you're going. But it is also important to think about your future budget as well, because if you're currently working on your site and managing your site and doing everything yourself, you don't really have to consider the designer budget going forward. But if you're planning on hiring someone to continue to maintain and update the site going forward, you want to also consider those factors as well. The hourly cost of having someone make those updates. And again, if you're shifting to a whole nother platform, training, if you're planning on taking that on, the training budget is for people to give you, the expertise, be able to manage it yourself going forward. So there is a lot to consider with the budget. I know one question was talking about, using Shopify apps and, the cost of that versus if you move to another platform. Again, that's a big shift. So the upfront cost would be quite a bit to get it shifted over, but then something like WordPress might not be as expensive because a lot of plugins are free with WordPress. A lot of them are paid for. So again, that's just something that you and a web designer would want to work out together and figure out the budget on that. So then from there, you can start researching designers. That's just the best way. That's what I would do if I was looking for myself. I would just type it in, web designers near me, or if you want to, do a broader search. And the big thing with designers is there's freelancers like me who I'm just a one-man show, but then there's also companies that have a whole team, and so that's going to have a little bit of a difference when it comes to budget and hourly, or the overall cost. But the big thing is to check their portfolios, check the client testimonials, check where they're landing on Google. I have in here experience in your industry. They don't necessarily have to have experience in your industry, but experience, like if you have an e-commerce site, making sure they have experience working with an e-commerce site. And then another thing I don't have on here is communication. I've ran into it before where people have talked about the communication has been very lacking or slow. So if people take a really long time to get back to you with information, that could be a sign that that's how that's going to be going forward. So it is something to consider if you're somebody who needs things done faster in a timely fashion, then, kind of taking notice of the communication style. And then most designers offer a free consultation. So it makes sense to talk to them about what you're looking for, what you're wanting, and hopefully they'll give you the time to give you that estimate and maybe a project scope. And that way you have a good idea of what to expect. From there, once you have a designer and you're ready to move forward, this is where you as the business owner are actually going to be a little bit more heavily involved, is the content, because obviously you're the experts, what your business is all about, what you want your customers to see. The designer helps present that information in a clear, consistent, beautiful way to where it hopefully is going to optimize the user experience and get them to do that call to action that you're looking for. But the content really has to come from you. And if you already have a website and you already have the content there, then it might just be a matter of reorganizing that content and changing it and making it look, better than it already is. But if you have a new message that you're trying to convey, or if you have new information altogether, then that's really where you're going to come in. And a lot of times how I work is I just say, give me all the content in a Word document, and it's just kind of given to me in a big mass thing. And then I take it and go, okay, from a user perspective, what's important, what's catchy, and then I can take that information and make it look pretty. It's basically what it is, and useful. So, and then same thing with images. If people, obviously having your own images is better if you can get them. Otherwise, do they have access to stock photos that are good and make sense for your business? Not just all stock photos fit. So, And then videos, hopefully, maybe you're planning on making some videos or you have videos, and those are important to get out there too, or give to your designer when you're going through the planning process. And again, this is a big collaboration part. A lot of times this is kind of happening throughout the build, and you're working together very closely back and forth to make sure the correct information is on the site that you need to present. And then optimizing SEO. Again, something you should check with your designer before you move forward is, are they able to make sure your SEO is as optimized as possible? I know the best practices as far as making sure SEO is, as good as it should be, as far as getting all the tools set up, getting the meta descriptions, getting the keywords, making sure everything is as good as it can possibly be. And then the best practices going forward as well, and the tools to use. But there's a lot of people who don't have the time to just do SEO 24/7, and there are companies that do that. So if that is something that you have a budget for, that you would like help with, that's something that you can coordinate with an SEO specialist. But it is important when someone's building your website to make sure all the SEO is as optimized as it can be as they're building it out. Um, and then making sure that all those tools are linked in as well, such as the Google Analytics, Google Search Console, and make sure you have that business listing to be able to make sure that you can track how it's doing going forward. And then usually like the last step, but you should be aware of this even before going forward, is the timeline. When do you need the website launched, and when do you expect it to be launched, and when can the designer get it launched? Those are things you can have a discussion over as you're kind of working with them. But, there obviously has to be time to build it all out, but there also has to be time for testing. Testing is really important, making sure obviously people can place orders or contact you. All those things are important. So that's usually a good process. And then for you to review it as well and test it as well, because it should be a team effort when it comes to the testing and making sure that everything is looking good, and the responsiveness across all devices, making sure everything's looking consistent and working on a phone as well as on a desktop. So having that clear understanding with the designer before anything starts is good, so that you know about when the launch will happen, and also your role as far as making the testing happen as well. All right, so for online tools and analyzing your site, these are just some free tools for you to use if you're your own website manager. This could help you understand how your site is doing as far as like accessibility and speed and some of those core web vitals we talked about. So the first one is Page Speed Insights. This is a Google one. So you put your domain name in there and you hit analyze, and it's gonna check your website, but it's gonna start with phone because, like I said, they prioritize mobile. But it's going to give you then suggestions, and they might be a little bit technical, but it could be something that you can take to somebody to be able to help you with them once you've done the analyzing of the site. And then the other one that is similar as GTmetrix, and they used to be totally free. I don't know if they still are, but they might make you create an account now, and they might give you only so much information. But it's a really good tool. They give you a grade, they give you a really good breakdown of all the things that you need to do to improve your site as far as speed. And so this is really good as far as the structure of the site and how well it's performing. Both of those tools work really well. Um, I talked about Google Search Console. Hopefully you already have it. If you don't, this is something that you can have your web designer or yourself set up for you. But this is really tracking how your site is being searched online. So what keywords are you showing up with, how many clicks you're getting with those keywords. So that's a really important thing, because if you know you want to show up with a certain search parameter and that's not even on here, then you know it's not working. So that's something to consider when you're building out your site. And then you can submit your sitemap. So that will tell the Google robots to crawl your site faster. So it just kind of helps again with that ranking. And Google obviously also gives more credibility to websites that use their products. So the more you get all this set up, the better it's going to do, just because they know you're being active with their own products. This is the accessibility checker that I was talking about earlier. So you can type in your site and they'll give you some, good insight into what's not accessible. So that way you can change it and fix it. But it's pretty extensive as well. And just an important thing to go through. Like if your site is really, really low for accessibility, then you'll want to try and figure out checking that out. All right. So hopefully, there's kind of a lot there, but there's the refresh where it's just a little bit of a tweaking of your website, but then there's also the redesign, which is much more extensive. And if you know you need more functionality on your site, that's something that you would want to maybe work with a web designer on, or if you are very technical savvy and know what you're doing, by all means, dive in. Hopefully this answers some of the questions. I know there were some other specific questions that people had, but hopefully I answered some of those, and I'm happy to, go over any other questions you might have as far as how to get this going and what you need to do. And so if anyone has any further questions, and I haven't looked at the chat, so I can.
You're good so far. It's just been me
Okay.
adding some resources. So if anybody has questions, feel free to
Okay, perfect.
go off mute and show your camera if you'd like and ask away.
Hi, Amanda. Thank you so much for this. If we were interested, if you have time available and are for hire room in your portfolio right now, and if you don't, do you have a network of other freelancers? If our platform or something that we wanted or your time constraints didn't mesh, that you could potentially steer us toward?
Yeah, I have I have 2 or 3. Yes, one for sure that I know I could steer people towards. Yes. But also I wouldn't mind helping if you just said, "Hey, here's a few designers that I was thinking of using." I wouldn't mind even just looking at them for you to give you a sense of yes, I think that sounds good, or maybe not.
Makes sense. And do we get in touch with you through your website if
Yeah.
we
Yep.
are interested in seeing if you might be able to help out?
Yeah, absolutely. I have a contact form on my website, and then if Jem wants to share my phone number, I'm fine with that too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah, actually, I could even put it in the chat.
Oh, no worries. Or
No.
an email.
Okay.
I mean, I'm happy
It
to
doesn't matter.
definitely just send an email over that kind of
Okay.
says this is where I'm at and what I'm looking for. And some of it, this has been so helpful. But of course, when you go to research it, so my main site is in Shopify. But I
Okay.
have plug and play of GoDaddy set up as my main, just because of elements of time. It's very easy
Yeah.
to just make it happen. And then being a bookseller, we also have access to bookshop.org. So I have a
Yep.
multitude of websites, and too many jobs. And so
Yes.
it's one of those situations. And then whenever we get all amped on our side to do something, we don't have time. And then we go to research designers, and you run into sometimes the issue of just having the right tools to evaluate what makes sense.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, that makes sense. And yeah, I mean, it's funny because you do usually start a certain way and then it grows, which is great that it grows, but then eventually it comes to a point where you're like, maybe it wasn't the best direction or the most efficient direction. So yeah, that happens all the time. And so that is another reason why you might want to look for a full redesign. But yeah, if you have questions as far as like what to look for, or who to work with, I mean, or even if you want to, like I said, send me an email. I'd be happy to look at everything and let you know.
Perfect. Thanks.
Yeah.
I have been looking at a full redesign. Yesterday I was advised to do it in pieces, to instead of trying to do a complete full overhaul, which is unaffordable.
Mhm,
So because we have content, we have a directory, and we should have an e-commerce site, but we don't. We do it all manually now. And
mhm.
launching, and also we have a separate website for our magazine, which I want to integrate into the main site. So it's a lot of different pieces that I've been guided are just too expensive for us to do all at once
Yeah.
with one entity. And we also have, not me, but some in-house folks who are really quite skilled who might be able to get us partway there on each of the things. I- Is that a thing? Like then we can try to find contractors after that to help us? I don't know.
Um, yeah, all right. I think if you've been advised for, so that's that planning part where maybe the audit piece, where maybe if you take, these are the steps we want to do, then you could say, could we get an estimate for each step? That's
Right.
something that I would recommend doing because,
Uh-huh.
and also the time frame, because I guess that's another question is, can you do one piece and launch it?
Right.
Or do you have to get all the pieces in place and launch all at one time? So that's something that you would know maybe. So that's something to think about.
Right.
And also it's every designer is different. So some designers are like, no, I need half up front, half at the end, things like that, or a deposit down, then a full. So and I'm pretty different. I just do hourly.
Mhm.
So it's like at the end of the month, I'm just like, okay, that's how many hours I did the end of this month. So that makes it a little bit easier for people to kind of like how you said, piecemeal it out over more time. But yeah, the as far as the planning process of that, if it's all connected but you can do one piece at a time, launch one piece at a time, that would be optimal if you could do that. But it does sound like it's very large and there's a lot of moving pieces. So that would be a good thing to have a consultation about, I think.
Like maybe, yeah, I'm just, maybe it's the platform first, the content, building out the
Hmm.
directory, and then working on the e-commerce. Like, in
Yes.
over the course of a year and a half or
Yeah.
something. I
Well,
don't
and
know.
that's actually one thing that I just did as well for a client is, we started with they don't have any website whatsoever, but they were going
Yeah.
to sell art. So then it was like, well, why don't she needed something fast. I'm like, well, e-commerce isn't fast. So let's start with just the website, get
Mm,
information up about you, get that out there. And then we can incorporate the e-commerce later when you're ready. So that is definitely something that can be done. If you
okay.
already have a website
Yeah. Oh,
that
yeah.
you're actively updating all the
Yeah.
time, then it
Mhm.
could be a little bit more tricky um
Yeah.
to do that simultaneously because obviously you don't want to be editing the live site. You should
Right.
be editing in a development site, and or I call it a staging site, and then you push all those changes live. But again, if you're super active on your site and you need to wait, it takes 6 months, then you might be running into some issues with that. Is all I'm, yeah,
Right.
envisioning.
Yeah. Thank you.
So it would take some planning for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it is doable. It's just
Thank you.
all right. Anyone else?
This isn't a question, but this is Jessica David. I'm with an organization called Local Return in Rhode Island, and Amanda did 2 websites for us recently, very quickly and efficiently, and I think beautifully and cost effectively. So I'm just going to put in a plug for Amanda's work. Jen connected me to her and just really couldn't have been any easier to work with. So thank you for that, Amanda, and highly
Thanks.
recommend.
Thanks, Jessica. Thank you.
Yeah, and one question that I had, besides the accessibility thing, which I know for booksellers and others and toy shops has been a real doozy as you get, that fine or you get targeted for a lawsuit. the one thing that I see again and again is when somebody has a web designer make a new website for them, and they maybe don't take all the content over, but they still have information that people want to know, but they don't have redirects. Like that 404 warning comes up. Can you
Yeah,
just
yeah.
talk a little bit about that and how you can make that more seamless for people?
Well, you usually, if you're fully migrating a site like that, you should that should be something that's done in the planning process where you look, they have a clear understanding of your link structure. And if pages are no longer going to be available, then you can add, I mean, in WordPress, it's a really easy tool to just add 301 redirects to where you say, okay, this page that no longer exists now needs to go to this page or even a section of this page. Because I've seen that too, where there's people have like 20 pages, but it doesn't have very much information. So it makes sense to take like 3 of the pages and make it into one nice, concise page. So then you can link to that particular section on a page. So again, that would be one of those 301 redirects that goes even to just a section on the page. So yeah, that should be something that is considered before. And that's part of that SEO practices as well, like making sure everything SEO wise is consistent moving over, because you don't want to start that over all the way because that is a huge hit. So yeah, that's what I would recommend as far as the redirect links. If you're going to do it by yourself, make sure you look at all the links that you have and don't just have one disappear. Make sure you redirect it to wherever it makes the most sense. And usually you can do that with a tool, whatever platform tool you're using.
Great. Thanks, Amanda. And being a
Anything
teacher,
else?
anybody?
Yeah, I know.
Well, we'll definitely send you the recording today. I'll see if I can also get the slides from Amanda if that works out for you. And send that your
Yeah,
way.
absolutely.
Also want to make sure that you all know about our next Local Leaders Roundtable, which is called Making Procurement a Priority, Policies for Strong Local Economies, and Kennedy Smith from the Institute for Local Self-Reliance will be presenting. I'll put this link in the chat too, but I will also send it to y'all. And just thinking about today's webinar, if there are follow-up questions you have, that's usually like, we had Amanda maybe like over a year ago talk about local SEO. And then as people coming to me and saying, oh, I need a new website, who do I talk to? It's like we can have people come back again. So if you have questions, definitely share them with me, and I can see that for future webinars. So thank you, Amanda. Thank you all for being here. Thanks, Katie, for the emoticon. And yeah, definitely look for my email and feel free to, continue and ask questions if you want. But if anybody has to hop off, I just want to acknowledge that. And thank you all for being here.
Well, thanks, Jen.
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
Thanks. Yeah, let me know if anyone has any further questions or follow-ups, but otherwise I'll be seeing you.
If Kara or Sarah or anybody else have any follow-up questions, feel free. We have some minutes left.
I definitely will be in touch, Amanda. It's
Okay.
probably more just a matter of me getting everything I want accomplished and all my different sites in an email to present to you, so you kind of get a sense of what I'm after. So much of it is just, I know that I'm limited by time, and what Jen mentions with like the 404s is I'll make a list in Bookshop and then I realize how I can make it more SEO friendly, and I break the link and I forget to update it on the other 2 sites, and everything I'm doing is manual, and I don't know how to code in Liquid.
Yeah, no.
Or whatever Shopify's language is. So like I bought a template, but I'm incredibly limited in what I can do there.
Shopify is limited in general. I mean, it's a really good e-commerce platform. I understand, and it does a lot, especially if you have a high inventory for sure. But yeah, as far as the design side of things, it is pretty limited.
Well, and if you have any recommendations there, I actually bought Shopify and use Shopify for the POS. I'm
Hmm.
probably
Yeah.
one of the fewest people out there, but I'm a point of sale consultant by trade,
Hmm.
accounting and IT with point of sale, and that really is the best option out there when Intuit retired their product. And the e-commerce has kind of been an after fact. So I know I don't even utilize the potential that it does have, but I'd be
Yeah.
open to how we make what I have work, in your opinion.
Okay. Yeah, and I mean, and that's the other thing is if you need that point of sale, you kind of have to have either Shopify or Square. Like it's just one of those things.
Yeah.
I'm sure there's more out there. I know that there's another one that someone else started using. But I don't know if it's I think it's a Canadian point of sale one. But anyway, Lightspeed, I think is what it
Oh,
was.
sure,
But
Lightspeed. Oh, and they are a strong contender.
yeah,
They're equivalent, without question. And
yeah.
Shopify is Canadian by origin too.
Oh, is it? Okay, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it just makes sense. It would make sense that to just make Shopify work better for you if you are going to continue to use that point of sale.
Wonderful.
Yeah, that sounds good. And yeah, as far as my timeline, I am available starting should be February. January's a little bit booked out, but yeah, February and on. I mean, obviously there's no rush on my end.
Well, I've been working on this for 2.5 years, right? So
Exactly. So
yeah. This is definitely fine, and that works for me too. I totally understand that.
okay.
That it's not like I have this idea and I need it now.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
yeah.
That's good. Because I've been sometimes you run into that. Like I need a site yesterday and it's like, uh-oh.
Oh my gosh. Well, I have all these great ideas, and I suffer a little bit from being too conservative, because I am an accountant by trade, and
Yeah.
I don't want it to go live until it's perfect.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that kind of makes things just stay by the ways.
Yeah, slows things down.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, that's okay. But at least you know it's right when it goes out there. So
For sure. Definitely.
yeah.
Well, and thank you, Jen, for my first time being able to be a part of this. And thank you for everyone else too on the call for being patient and letting me monopolize your time. So,
Oh, thanks for being here for sure. Glad it worked out.
yeah.
Sarah or Brian or Ken, did you have any questions you wanted to share?
Yeah, I had a quick question. I'm Sarah Ashmore. I work at Bethany Beach Books / The Book Drop, which is our book subscription service. And we're looking at going to a new website host for our subscription side of things. So in that process, because we would be migrating thousands of customers' accounts, is that something that would be like a specialized sort of thing we need to seek out specific web developers for? And would that be contingent on the platform we decide to move to, if you would know?
I think that would be a little bit of, yeah, kind of both. Depending on what platform. So when you say subscription, they have can you explain what kind of subscription functionality it is?
Yeah, so the way it's set up is every month we mail out basically a blind date with the book. So when you sign up for a subscription, you tell us the genre and then we pick the book and send it directly to their house. So we have a bunch of different adult genres. We offer it for kids. Some of them are gifts. Grandparents love to give their grandkids book subscriptions for Christmas.
Yeah.
And then we currently have a few different payment plans. You could do like month to month, a 3-month prepay, or a 6-month prepay is how our subscriptions are set up.
Okay. And so you're looking to migrate everybody to a whole new system altogether as far as the subscriptions go?
Yes, we're currently on Subly, which I don't know if you've heard of. It's like a subscription
Haven't heard of
niche,
that one.
but we're just running into so many issues and user complaints from things that we can't fix through website design, because since it's a smaller niche company, it's like
Yeah.
little things like on where our users can log into their account. They had a little thing that was like, oh, need help, reach out. And it went directly to the Subly chat instead of us. Just like weird little things like that, that I wouldn't even know to check until I know they're wrong. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Just out of curiosity, could you have a website that you build, but then it links into the subscription service?
Maybe right now we own our domain, but Subly hosts our website and everything in it, because we also sell books online, like one-time orders and things like that. So they host the e-commerce, the subscription, all parts of it.
Oh, okay.
And it's not
Yeah.
like one that you can kind of like piecemeal and redirect out. Like we
Okay.
could redirect to a different site, but for the cost of it, it would only make sense if we used what we could of it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense, especially if they come with all that pre-made stuff with the e-commerce and everything. Yeah, that's something that I would find, if you find another subscription company that you think would work better, then it's a matter of figuring out if you can transfer all the data from one space to another space, and that might actually be more of a coding development person who does more code, if you will, because they might have a way to actually pull that data from one subscription to another subscription, which it would definitely be a more technical thing, but might save you a lot of time.
Okay. And I
Yeah.
know obviously like the payment information doesn't transfer because of laws. But
Yeah.
as far as like if someone were to buy a 6-month subscription today and they had like 4 left when we transfer, then they might be able to move it over where we would have to like individually go in and add those.
Correct. Yeah. I would hope that someone could do that. It probably is very platform dependent, but I
Mhm.
could kind of see if they could extract the data from the one subscription, and if there's a way to import the data into the other subscription, there might be a way to make that happen. But yes, that is definitely that's something where I'm trying to think. Some of those like freelance websites where you can go on and say, this is the project I'm trying to do.
Mhm.
And then people can bid out, because there's quite a few people who, I mean, that's pretty specialized, but there's a lot of people in the development space that are really, really, really good at that stuff, who could come in and say, yes, I know how to do that for you. That's one way to check for people to be able to do it. Either that or just start Googling, development companies. Because I don't even know if it's necessarily website development. It almost seems like a whole, like another level of data development.
Yeah, because we would also redesign like our website, the e-commerce side of it, but then
Yeah.
because we have the subscription, we also just need to bring that with us. So
Yeah.
I get what you mean. Like it's 2 different skill sets, basically.
Correct. Yeah. And so you could have like a web designer that's like, yeah, I'm going to build the web part. But if they could get the product line also to pull over, I mean, that would be huge too.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's a big shift.
Yeah.
But hopefully that gives you some direction to start.
It does. Thank you.
Possibly, Sarah, to the company that you're moving to, the platform that you're moving to, they may be able to help point you to a data conversion.
Mhm.
And that usually is the term they use. Like somebody who can help you with data conversion, to pull off that part of it.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion.
Well, thanks again, you guys, for holding out till the bitter end. And I will definitely follow up with you guys soon. And thank you again for being here, Amanda.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you so much.
Great. Bye, everybody.
Bye.